I'm Mary Lercy. I'm lead product consultant of Serverless 360. You can find me at the booth to talk more about how we can operate efficiently with Azure. Yeah, I'm glad to welcome my friend Wagner here today. So he is very popular in the Azure community. He has enabled us through a lot of user group presentations and also in international conferences. Yes, he had been an incredible support to us right from Integrate 2020, 2021, and so on. And today I got to discover his interest into 3D painting and miniature paintings, which was incredible. Yeah. And please join me in welcoming Wagner to make us all coders from now on. Yes, who has been a former Azure MVP and now a principal program manager at Logic Apps. Please join me.
Hello, everyone. It's been a long time, right? 2 years and something. It's really, really good to be back here. Thanks to the CoVI for organizing and Microsoft for bringing a lot of people, me including. So my name is Wagner Silveria, and I'm a senior program manager with the Logic Apps team. Today, we're going to be talking about the idea of having low code and pro code working together, right? So think about Kent's session and my session almost as like a big 90-minute session. And while he set up all the backend for me, what I needed to do is just starting to consume that. But during that time, what I'm going to do is talking to you about why Power Platform and AIS works really well together. Okay? So first thing, let's see if my clicker is actually working. Usually works better when we turn on. There we go. So on the agenda today, let's do a little recap of what is AIS, right? It's going to be the preaching to the choir. Most of you now already know, but it's just like really quickly recap the value proposition of the Azure Integration Services. Let's talk about Power Platform, talk a little bit about the personas, and then explore some of those scenarios that Kent show and how we connected really well AIS with Power Platform on those scenarios. During that time, we're going to do demos. Hopefully, all the USBs that are sacrificed is going to work. And then we talk a little bit some takeaways. So Azure Integration Services, as we've been discussing so far, right, the Azure integration is a combination of capabilities. We have all the messaging and event capabilities, right? You have the orchestration or workflow business process capabilities. We usually need to extend that into when the things that is on the platform doesn't suffice. And more, as was Balan and Kent were talking about, we needed to expose those business processes as APIs. And that's what Azure Integration Services gives to you, right? The ability to do the orchestration of those services with Logic Apps, extend the compute when the out-of-the-box things doesn't come with functions, right? Working with either real-time events or messaging with Service Bus and Event Grid, expose that through API management, and then there is the cases where messaging-based or real-time doesn't cut. You have like large sets of data that you need to export. That's where Data Factory comes in place to do all those ETL processes and do like really big data movements, right? This together gives us what is AIS and gives like the capabilities that we see in a lot of enterprise integrations today. On the other side of the coin, we have Microsoft Power Platform, right? The idea of Microsoft Power Platform is making sure that all those shadow IT or those applications that start small and then become an issue for IT is like treated as first-class citizen, just like any other type of application, right? So for that, we have the Power Apps that is allow you to visually create applications, consuming a lot of those components that we have in place. We have Power Automate to, literally as the name says, automate business processes, usually first party, part of the application, but can be used by itself, right? We have Power BI to do all the visualizations of all that data that we're gathering. And Power Virtual Agent as a new set of UI, right? So conversations now are a type of UI, and that's where Power Virtual Agents comes to place. Underpinning all of that, we have a set of data connectors, right? Really the easy way to connect to SaaS applications to first party, quite similar to what we have in Logic Apps. We have the AI builder to starting to predict some outcomes and trying to make it more intelligent and creating some of those things. We have a common data repository that can be used across all of those applications on Dataverse, and a set of management tools to actually making sure that you can policy and work all of those things. Why we wanted to combine those two? I think it becomes kind of obvious when you see the samples that can give you, but the idea is now I can work on the applications, right, and concentrate on getting the applications where the backend is provided to me as a set of serverless components, right, that are going to be scaled as I need, that is going to be easy for me to consume, right, and that's where we're using AIS and Power Platform together most of the time. The people that is using that today, right, we have on one side what we call in the citizen developers. That is before those SME specialists that wanted to create solutions that IT was too busy creating the big rocks, right? Those are the people that really need to unlock the data, that want to create those business processes, understand really well the business process. So we give the ability for them to help get into that process. And with that, we get a lot more agility when you're creating the processes. We have the pro developers, right? That's on the other side is the people that is going to be creating the things where citizen developers started to fall short. In some cases, we still needed to create processes like the enterprise integration that Kent was showing, and we needed to do that in a way that those two people or those two systems work really well together. And of course, there is the people that manages all of that, that manages the infrastructure, that manages the compliance, that manages the access to data, which is IT. They can work really well together, right, if we allow them to. And that's where we put application now as a team sport, and instead of competing each one against each other, like we had today before, Power Platform and AIS together allow them to work better together, right? So usually the citizen developers is going to be focusing on prototyping applications, creating things fast for us to use, where the pro developers are going to be implementing the systems or the backend systems that we need, and provide an easy way for the citizen developers to consume that. On the other side, pro developers need us to find ways to maintain and push that to different environments, and that's where the IT pros are going to be supporting that, granting the resources and providing the infrastructure for us to do that. If you think about the combination between citizen developers and IT administrators, is the citizen developers becomes, after the things are in place, becomes the SME and the trainers, while the IT pros are governing that environment for them. Okay? So with that in mind, let's look about some of the scenarios where Power Platform and AIS works really well together. Spoiler alert, is the various of the scenarios that can show, but I'll talk a little bit about the why we're using that, and then show the Power Platform side. So first, we're going to be talking about 3 scenarios here. It became quite apparent on Kent's presentation that we needed to talk about reusable components, right? Like a way for us to create backend, but being easily used in the front-end systems. It also became relatively apparent that we needed to react to events, both first-party events, like things that happens on inside Power Platform, but also things that are happening outside Power Platform and might affect that. And finally, we see that like a lot of the things that we're doing is about service orchestration. We don't want to code everything now. We wanted to compose applications together and taking advantage of connectors that you already have out of the box instead of having to write everything that we needed to create. So when you're thinking about reusable components, what are the challenges and the things that we needed to take in consideration? Especially when you're thinking about like not coming just straight and using Power Platform straight out of the box. We have the problem with integrate legacy components, right? That Power Platform, that because was created for modern applications, might not understand how to use on that. We needed to make sure that whatever we implement it to reuse, right? So we create it once, and we use multiple times, which fosters innovation and allow people to reuse those assets and start to compose. We needed to get worried about hybrid integration and on-premise integration because Power Platform by default is cloud native, right? They have some components that help us to connect to that, but usually those components also brings its own baggage and performance that you needed to take in consideration. And talking about performance, most of those times, the type of application that you're doing requires low latency, right? Especially when you're talking about those components as APIs. Then, if you're looking at those challenges, how is AIS the solution to help Power Platform to bring those things to the fold? First one, as Kent was showing, like getting all those legacy and hide it behind API management. Now you have like a first-class citizen way to connect to that Power Platform understands. But better than that, not when you're talking about APIs, that is still a developer's game, right? Like getting an HTTP call, putting like all different types of credentials and that kind of stuff is the kind of things that developers do. How about we get that and encapsulate as a custom connector that is going to be acting as any other connector that they have access on Power Platform, right? On the back end, take advantage of Logic App's VNet integration now and make sure that that connectivity now is native instead of you having to drop another component just to support that, like on-premise data gateway or hybrid network, right? And also take advantage of Logic App's stateless workflows to allow the low latency that you need, right? One of the big things about like not using AIS or not using Logic Apps when implementing APIs was it is too slow, right? With Logic Apps stateless workflows, we kind of break that paradigm a little bit. So 2 of the scenarios that we're going to be talking. The first one is the hybrid integration via customer connector, and that is that discount calculator that we talked about, right? So we're going to be looking at that one, but the thing that is going to make that work really well for Power Platform is the ability to create that custom connector. Okay, so let's take a look at that sample. When we last came here, Kent has created a set of APIs, right? And one of those APIs was the discount calculator that you already see like working all its glory. So what we wanted to do now is making sure that that discount calculator is ready for reuse, right? And you have a really nice way to do that now is if you go to discount calculator and select Create Power Connector. It connects straight to an environment that you have in Power Platform, right? So in here, you can simply select what is the API that you want, which is the Power App environment that you wanted to publish, right? It's going to take a little bit of time because this one is connected to the Microsoft environment, and you have no idea how many environments that you have there. There we go. And you give it the API name. As soon as you click that create, it's going to churn behind the scenes and first extract that Swagger, right, that open API definition, encapsulate that in one of those codeless connectors, and publish that in Power Platform, right? This takes a little bit of time, and because of we wanted to look at a lot of other things, let's take a look at how that worked on Power App. So inside Power App, I had a custom connector called Discount Calculator, right? Which is pretty much implemented as that connector down to the point where on the definition, I have a set discount operation that is a post request into a PIM, right? With my discount request that looks like discount code or the number and order total that can't define, and the same thing for the response. Okay. Now that I have that connector, what I can do quite easily is come into a. Okay, let me just close that and go back to my app. Just let it load. Oh no, sorry. Wrong place. That's the one that I'm looking for. So I have a Power App here, and one of the data associated to that is the discount calculator connector, right? In order to do that, it simply needs to be coming to data, connectors, and across all the connectors that we have for like out-of-the-box connectors, I can search for discount calculator if I know how to type, and it's going to be available. It happens. Anyway, with that connector as now a data source inside a Power Platform, I can do things like this. I can come to a form, right? And then include that as part of my own change, event inside each one of those things, which are people that used to implement Windows applications before remember a lot about that, right? So we bring in that to the modern age and making it easier for the system developers to do. So that language here might look a little bit complicated, but it's not much harder than an Excel formula. And everyone that works on that was like Excel masters before of that, right? That's where they were creating applications before. But on that one, just to look at the logic, we say if my discount value, my discount code, which is that one, is not empty and my order value is bigger than 0, update my order discount variable, so create an internal variable, and update that to discount calculate set discount, which is exactly the action that you have under that, passing the order number as the order number value, the discount code, and the order total as the order value, right? So if I get and run that application, just go to the top. So what I have here is a list of orders, right? And if I go to one of those orders and try to add it, let's say now instead of having the total of 10,000, right, I have 20,000. And my discount code is integrate 2022. So it is executing, and then it found that like for 20,000, I have a discount of 3,000, and now my order total, my net total is 17,000, right? So with that, like I expose like an API ready for people to use really simply inside inside Power Platform. So that was the first demo, is like showing that like how we can reuse that API, right? Convert to a custom connector and easily use inside the systems. Next scenario. So we have like third-party APIs via custom connector. And on that one, what we have is again, like the chatbot calling that same API and going through the thing, right? And what I wanted to show on that one compared to the other is like on sometimes you can create that custom connector, and some others you might still fall back on the API, but on both cases it is still win for the systems, right? I'm going to keep that demo for the next step when you're going to talk about some of the other scenarios, just for speediness. Otherwise, I'm going to have to jumping back and forth a little bit. So keep in mind that we're going to be looking at that one. So next scenario that I want is like reacting to events, right? What we wanted to do that? Like we wanted to react to changes on Power Automate because Power Platform, because Power Platform is not going to exist in isolation. It's going to exist with the rest of the ecosystem of the company, right? We wanted to make sure that we can broadcast changes to multiple systems. And in order to do that, we don't have ability to like trigger time and again the same event. And on the other hand, we might want to update Power Platform when things happen on the other side, right? So now those both systems become kind of reactive, and you're able to integrate all of that. It's quite simply know there is leverage from events on Dataverse. There is a data connector for that, right? So now everything that is happening on Dataverse, I can bring and I can filter really well for the types of events and the types of filters inside that event. It's not just like when an order happened. It can be when an order happened with the notification set to true, or it's when an order happened and has a discount value or something like that. But the same way, we can leverage third-party connectors to trigger the events. And then when something happens, you go and use the connector now as an action, just like Kent was doing, to update the Dataverse connector, right? So on that one, we have the ability now to really bring the Power Platform to the rest of the ecosystem in a way that they work together. Some of the scenarios would be like when we're reacting to Dataverse. When something happened on Dataverse, I receive that information, I push it into the service bus, and when something else happened on that one, I receive the message on service bus again, and I update it back. So I have like the bidirectional communication on that. Finally, let's go to talk about service orchestration, and then we can go and see like those other two demos. So from a service orchestration point of view, right? First, we wanted to make sure that we're able to connect or to orchestrate third-party and first-party in a way that is both for SaaS application but also for bespoke applications, right? We wanted to control the performance. We wanted to make sure that it's like noisy neighbors is not something, we don't become victim of our own success, which is usually the problem that we have when we're doing that code in the old days, right? As soon as things starting to be too successful, the system was not responding because the infrastructure would not like go together with the success of your application. And also, we wanted to have visibility of all those processes in a way that is easy for me to support, right? I don't want it to spend more time trying to find the problems that I have than running the thing. For that, what we have is like, on one side, we can leverage Logic Apps connectors, both the SaaS ones, the built-in, right, or the custom connectors that we're creating, but also the HTTP connector, as Kent was saying, as that like last resort, right? The out-of-box connectors when we want, when we can, custom connectors if you needed to create, HTTP connector directly if we don't have an option for the others. We can now fine-tune the Logic Apps application, right? Because as we're saying, Logic Apps standard allow you to define exactly what is the initial compute that you have, but also what is the scale profile that you have. And with that, it allows you to like run and don't become victim of your own success. And you're only going to be paying for the spikes instead of having to provision beforehand. And finally, you can use API insights, like application insights, to coordinate not just the workflow scenario, right, but also all the components that are connected together. And then we can find out exactly where things are in the process or where it fails and why. We cannot talk about service orchestrations without talking about the elephant in the room, right? It's like we have Logic Apps, that is a service orchestration. We have Power Automate, that is also a service orchestration. So how do we make sure that we work with those two well together instead of pitching against each other? By defining really good roles of when I'm going to be using one or the other, right? So Logic Apps is usually workflows that are outside the scope of just Power Platform. Right, so when you're doing like in a lot of cases what Kent was showing is we creating for reuse. Because of that is a natural reason to use Logic Apps. Right, the places where you need a network connectivity or low latency, by default, that is where you're going to be using Logic Apps because of the Power Automate doesn't give it support for that. Right, and when you needed monitoring across the resources or across services, because you can have like one app insights to rule them all. I'm a Kiwi, so I have to give a lot of the rings joke somewhere, right? On the other side, when you're talking about Power Automate, we need, if implementing business logic inside Power Platform, there is no reason for you to go out and use Logic Apps just for that. That's the place where Power Automate should be used. When you're extending Dynamics, when you're extending Office products, Power Automate is there like at your fingertips and is part of that process already, so use that. And finally, when you have like a much more restricted connector governance, when you needed to deal with DLP and things like that, that's where all that management tooling that we have in Power Platform by default also help you to support, to give a lot more guardrails around the citizen developers. Okay? Front scenarios. We already saw what is it? Okay, one before. So we already saw the Twilio that he was talking about, but also we have the ability to bring information down to Dataverse using the Power Virtual Agent. So let's jump now back and take a quick look at the Power Virtual Agent. What I have here is a chatbot that we implemented using the combination of both Power Automate and bot framework in a way to give you the ability to connect with all of that, right? So how is that working? I have a specific topic here that drives my shipping status. And when I starting to interact with the bot, right, it asks me for my email, so I can go and enter some inputs. And now I like moonlighting on contoso.com. Then how can I help you today? I wanted to know about my shipping status. And as soon as I do that, I started to hit a specific topic, that a specific conversation that was designed for that, right? So the first thing that he's asking is for the order number. My order number is 10,000. Now, what is going to be doing with that order number? It did a couple of things. First, it checked the shipping status on, let's open that quickly. It checked the shipping status on Dataverse. And in order to do that, I don't need to go outside Power Platform to do that, right? So just show you that that particular one is a Power Automate process. That the only thing it does is go, look it into my, look at my order table, pick up the order, verify what is the variable, push it back, and then let it continue with the process, right? A really good sample that's like, I don't need to use Logic Apps every time. If I were doing that, I would have to be calling an API to go to Logic Apps to do stuff, right? Since it's first party, we can combine that and put that inside. But then after I did that, it goes and says that my order has not been shipped yet, right? Because of that, it's asking if you wanted to receive an WhatsApp notification. And if I say yes, then it goes and call another Power Automate to update the Dataverse data, right? But in between that, in order to check the shipping status, because it's already picked up, he needs to go and connect it to the service that can create it, right? And in order to do that, he needed to go and use the bot framework, right? So while it's opening, just show you there that using the bot framework is actually doing an HTTP call that then, because of that, calls that API that calls it Logic Apps and then comes back with the information. So what it's doing here is actually, you come back already? That's fine. I have one open here, right? And what we're looking is the checking shipping status, if I'm not right. So here is like a similar kind of workflow, but using the bot framework. And what it's doing is first it do a call into integrate. And now all the work that Kent did for me pays off, because instead of me having to create all of that, I just go and still call the same API, right? Then, because that API is stateless, I can guarantee that the process works quickly enough and come back. Then after that, when I receive in a 200, it goes and also provides me with a really good response in terms of a nice visual card for me to look at. And this is where we're using that send response as like a thumbnail card, right? So what we did here is combining like two different types of service orchestration. And just to illustrate that some cases we needed to use Power Automate, but on the other cases, we also need to use the other one. And it's not like a case of one versus the other, but it's like, why not both? That was the demo, right, for both of those. And then to finish up, I want to talk to you, like give you like 3 takeaways. So the first one, I hope that I already, by now I proved to you, Power Platform and Azure Integration Services are better together, right? It's like you're able to like quickly create backend services, expose those backend services, and quickly create front-end things that is consuming that. All of that without having to worry about like what is my infrastructure is going to be look like, and not bothering just one group of people, instead bringing them together, which brings us to the next point, right? Application development is a team sport. And before, we were not treating as a team sport in such, right? We always say application development is for developers. What we say here is application developers is for everyone. If we play to their strengths as people, right? And that's where Power Platform and AIS together enable those fusion teams that is just not just developers or not just citizens, but like the combination of them to work well together. And because of that, we're going to producing more and producing faster. Then finally, like these samples that we just show, understand the tooling, right? And play to their strengths instead of like creating kind of boxes and say, for your orchestration, you have to do this. Make sure that you understand what you have there and understand like when and who is going to be dealing with that after it goes to production, and use the right tool for the right job. But it doesn't need it to be like just one versus the other. And that's what I have for today. How are we going with time? I can't believe it. So we can, in this case, we can talk offline, right? And I'm going to be here for the rest of the rest of the 3 days. So just come and say hi. As Ken say, don't be shy.
Cove.co